I'm Jacqueline Pogue. I am a retired psychotherapist, university teacher, organizational consultant, and leader of spiritual retreats. But currently, I am involved in events and projects that focus on creating a sustainable, just, compassionate, and more spiritually awakened world. And that takes me into many interesting films and projects. But more importantly than all of that is the fact I am a caregiver for my wonderful husband. This film for me is about Alzheimer's and how we can go forward as caregivers with helping ourselves and one another. Most importantly, as I said, I am a caregiver. So that is where my credentials come in, more important than anything I've ever done. And I can also begin to talk now about stress, because I think this is the main key that most of us face as caregivers. The stress of what to do to take care of our loved one, the stress of making decisions, the stress of things changing constantly, the stress of how to take care of ourselves, the stress of family members having different viewpoints about how this care should and could be given. So there's so much related to this stress that we are always under 24 hours a day. Some people call it the 36-hour day. So one of the things that we can think about this stress, it isn't even just the stress we're in now. This is even more upsetting to some of us because any trauma that we've ever gone through in childhood, the trauma of losing anyone we loved, the trauma of moving away from our friends, the trauma of an illness in the family or with ourselves, an injury, an accident, those traumas are actually unconsciously getting re-stimulated when we're going through this role of caregiver. The loss of so many parts of our relationship with this person, the loss of their dignity, the loss of our communication abilities with one another. There are just so many losses we experience, both physically, emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. Often we don't feel we can connect as intimately and as much with our heart as we used to, because we are reliant on so many words to help us in these areas. And this kind of stress gets re-stimulated by the current things we're going through, so that we don't even realize old feelings are coming up, old traumas that we're not even aware of. And so sometimes we overreact or wonder ourselves, why am I having such a huge reaction to this situation? I should know better. I should know that it's always going to change and there are always going to be new problems and new challenges. So I just want to comment on that about be gentle with yourself. It's very important with stress and all of these things going on in our lives to forgive ourselves. It's so easy to forgive our loved one because we know they can't help what they're doing or saying. But it's harder to forgive ourselves. So one thing we can do to help our stress is to simply accept that we're doing the best we can and to say, I forgive myself. And say that regularly with your heart, not just with your mind. Really feel yourself giving forgiveness and offer that to yourself as a gift at this time of your life. So another thing I've noticed about this adventure and this learning experience is that it has tapped into some insecurities that I didn't even remember that I had as a child. I grew up being fairly competent in my life and having a direction for my life, and felt very confident about what I know and that I had a lot of answers. And also being a psychotherapist, people coming to me and me asking all the right questions or giving some good advice occasionally, not too often because you're supposed to let them figure that one out. But the bottom line is, I realize for the first time in my life in a long time, I don't have answers. I am on a quest also to find answers, to find other experts, to find other people in my situation, to get their story and their advice. So at a point in my life, I'm feeling much more vulnerable, that I don't have all the answers, and I never know when things will change, and I don't know how I'll have to adapt to the new changes, and so I can never prepare. I'm also a person that always had plan B and a backup plan, and now that doesn't seem so relevant any longer. So I want to comment that my vulnerability, I'm learning to accept my vulnerability and embrace it as the feminine aspect of myself, also the not knowing, and also to realize that this vulnerability is turning into a strength. And the kind of strength it is that other people realize how authentic I am when I'm vulnerable. Because if I come off like an expert, like I know everything and have answers, they think, well, I'm not in that situation, and that just isn't true for me any longer. So I feel like I'm better able to connect with others and better able to connect with my husband because I see his vulnerabilities. And now I have my own. And it makes me more heart-focused and more humble and more gentle, both with others and myself. One of the things that I've noticed is we talk to each other, and when we see each other as a caregiver, we have this immediate bond. If I meet someone and they say, oh, I was a caregiver for my husband or wife and my daughter or my mother, I think, oh, you have an idea of what it is. And so we bond through this role of caregiver. And we've had so many roles in our lives, and I find myself often identifying with the role. And what I would like to say is that I'm learning that this identification with the role, I've always known wasn't my true nature. I have a deeper personhood, and I have a deeper sense of self beyond any relationship in the material world. But I also notice that I'm kind of locking into this role. And I just want to remind you that you are so much more than this role you're in. You are still a human being with a vision for your life, with dreams and hopes and fears. You are an individual. Of course, you're connected with so many people in your life and so many maybe causes and other things that you're involved in. But there is a deeper you, and you have to honor that you. I want to remind you that there is someone inside you, and maybe it's only when you go for a walk in the woods, or when you go to the mountains, or take a walk along the beach, or stand under the night sky and look at the stars and the moon, and you realize that there's something bigger than you, and maybe you feel connected to that sense of something larger than yourself. So I want to remind you that that part of you is still alive and well and needs nurturing too. So whether you take walks, or whether you meditate, or whether you simply sit and listen to music, whether you paint, do artwork, or write, journal, that remember to stay connected to that inner you. And remember that there's a deepening of that you that can go on and on. So one of the questions I'd like to leave you with is, who am I really? What is my purpose in life? Why am I here? What is the meaning of this experience for me? Not just for them, but for you. What does all this mean? How do you make meaning from this experience that you're living? So I offer these questions that are larger than our little world of doing. And I ask you to think about your being. Who are you? What is life? What is another? Why are you here? And those are the most important questions I can think of that you could ask yourself. One of the facts of when the mind is most open is the early morning when you waken, and at night just before you go to sleep. There's a kind of beginning and ending of the day that lets your mind be open. Sometimes we fill that time with, oh, what'll I do today? And the list, and you start filling it with lots of thoughts. And sometimes before you go to sleep at night, you review your day, you have your regrets, you have your memories of good and bad. But also you can use those same 2 times to give yourself a very important message. And the messages that you want to leave yourself for the dream time are any really important question that you have. I can't give you that question. I can share some of the questions I have at night. But think about what is an important question that you'd like to leave with your mind open for the next, hopefully 7 to 8 hours. I know we don't really get enough sleep, but whatever number of hours you get to sleep, that you can be working on this in your sleep time. So think about an important question before you go to sleep. And one of the questions that will always work too at the end of the day is, who am I? Not your doing, but your being. Who are you? Who am I in all this? And in the morning, when you awaken, another thing you can do that's very helpful in the day is, instead of thinking about all that list of things you must do, which we all have, but to think in this sense. Another way the brain works is that if you set an intention, not a wish, not a hope, not an I want, but I intend, that this is more likely to attract the energy that you need to create that intention. So in the morning, one of my intentions may be, I intend to keep a balance today of care for myself and my loved ones. That's an example of something I intend on a daily basis. It may be a bigger intention. I intend to know the real purpose of this teaching in my life, of this Alzheimer's disease. I intend to understand this teaching for me. It can be very personal. So I invite you also to set an intention for your day, and then to feel that intention, not only with your words as a thought form, but also from your heart. Really feel that intention and set it forward and offer it to the day. Sometimes we want to change our physiological responses of stress, tension, anxiety, fear, anger. The fastest way to change the physiology of the body is through the breath. So we don't have time for that 5K run. We don't have time to have a therapy session. So the fastest way to change the physiology of the body for relaxation is the breath. So give that 3-part breath a try, play with it, experiment with it, and happy breathing. But do remember, breathe. The best way to begin with deep breathing is to start with the exhalation. That way you ensure yourself a deeper breath when you inhale. So the exhalation is, it's easier again if you place your hand on your abdomen, your right hand on your abdomen, kind of pressing in as if you're pushing all the breath out, feeling like you're pushing back to the back of your spine with the exhalation before you inhale. So it begins to look like this. And then when you're feeling slightly desperate for that breath, then begin the inhalation at the abdomen level first, breathing through your nose, actually, breathing in through your nose, then to your solar plexus, and then high into your heart and lungs. The final inhalation, all on one inhalation. I'm breaking it down into parts now. And then pause on the interlude. And then let all of that breath just fall out through the exhale of your mouth with your mouth. Finding your own pace, finding your own rhythm, and do it in the way that feels comforting and easy for you without stressing the inhale or the exhalation. Just find your own rhythm and experiment with the breath. This is the 3-part breath, again, bringing 7 times more oxygen to your brain, and also remembering that your body, each breath you take, the brain gets 25% of that breath. So to keep your mind clear and focused and calm, breathing is really especially important, and it's the fastest way to change your physiology. That's so important. If you want to change your physiology in the quickest possible moment, take a really deep 3-part breath.